Farm Bureau. Luke Johnson joins us. He's been out of town the last couple of days, made it back, was there in the ballpark at Pete Taylor last night. He is co-host of the SuperTalk Eagle Hour, good friend of ours. And Luke, obviously tough one last night. We kind of started the show off, by just about any measure, a successful, if not wildly successful season. Hey Dad said maybe the second best season in Southern Miss baseball history. You were there last night, and obviously there's disappointment, but there were a lot of people, I think, that walked out of that ballpark with their heads held high last night, and maybe a different feeling than a year ago.
It was pretty surreal. You don't get to be a part of things like that. Everybody was expecting to be a part of Omaha dog pile, and instead they were able, even in the midst of like utter disappointment, to see something that you don't get to see very often. The most successful baseball coach in your history, sending him off at home with chants. Justin Storm said it best in the presser. He said, while Tennessee is dogpiling, we hear louder than their celebration. This two chants going through right behind home plate. That section was chanting USM. Above third base, the crowd was chanting Barry, and then it kind of turned into a thank you 40, thank you 40. And as you know, as you said earlier, Tennessee had to recognize that. And so there was a moment, and I shared with you this off air, after Scott shook hands with the Tennessee staff, and after he tipped his hat to the crowd, he just started walking towards left field, just being, I got to go get my guys rounded up and give them the post-game speech. But nobody really followed him for a few seconds, and it was just real metaphorical. He had his back to the crowd, back to everybody. Everybody was watching 40, and it was almost as if, this is 40, like he would do, kind of slip out the back door, not want any attention. And that's just when the crowd just took it to the next level. So it was almost like you said, it was different. There was a celebration, but in some ways, looking back on this, yeah, you didn't go to Omaha, but you still got to be a part of something that was probably bigger than Omaha 50 years from now, because you got to send Scott out like that.
You mentioned Tony Vitello in his post-game press conference was asked about Scott Barry. What did he say?
His opening statement, he just said, three things that really came to his mind really fast, and one of those was Scott Barry. He made a comment about him being a champion. So later on, I just kind of followed up and asked about, you guys in the midst of celebrating turned around, saw Barry walking, and you raised your hats to him, and like their team just joined in with the crowd, and Tennessee fans were clapping as well. And he just went on and on about Scott, and he said some funny things. He said that he was glad that he won, but he wanted to watch Dustin Dickerson play more baseball. And then he went and talked about Scott on and on about his family. Apparently, Miss Laura and the kids went up and thanked and congratulated, the Tennessee coaches. And he just went on and on about Scott. And then towards the end, he just kind of put his head down and said, Scott Barry is more of a man's man than I am. And even in victory, there was a recognition that this was bigger than just a wins and loss. And that's what Scott said in the postgame. He said, I learned a long time ago, the numbers come and the numbers go, the wins come and the losses come. He said, but he began to cry when he said this. He said, I found out what's most important to me. It's investing in people. And if you want people to invest in you, you've got to invest in people and mold them and shape them. And that's what he's exemplified, and that's what he was able to share last night.
On the baseball front, we were talking about this for the first half hour of the show today, and when it comes down to it, I think Tennessee was just a little better. They were a little better offensively. They were a little better on the mound, and that turned out to be the difference in the super regional in the series, and the difference in going to Omaha and not going to Omaha. Do you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, I said yesterday, if they didn't jump on Beam early, if they were down 4 runs or so, going into the 5th or the 6th, it was going to be really hard, and that's what happened. And still what's amazing is the Eagles left 11 on last night. The way they lost last night, even to a superior bullpen that was available last night, they lost the same way when they've lost this year. It's that they left a bunch of people on base. They out-hit Tennessee last night. They just never got timely hits. They never got a multi-hit, a multi-base hit last night. All 7 hits were singles.
Yeah.
And going back to like what going back to like the bullpen situation, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but Southern Miss only had 7 pitchers this year that pitched 20 innings or more. And it was like Armistead at like 43 as the floor, and the next guy pitched like 19 innings. And so when you think about a microcosm of this super regional, I think this is probably Scott's best coaching job, because the 17 team on paper was better than this team. The 21 and the 22 teams were better than this team, and yet they made it within 1 game of Omaha hosting the Super at home with a very, very guys were available, but it was just, some of the trust. Who do you put in those big situations? But only 7 guys pitched more than 20 innings for the Eagles this year.
In your mind, did the series turn in game 2 when, with a 4-0 lead, Tennessee answers? They get 6 runs. There's some defensive miscues, and Tanner Hall looks a little less like the Tanner Hall we have expected to see every time he steps on the mound?
Yeah, I think there is something to be said for the fact that Oldham wasn't able to chew up more innings, and so they had to use Storm, where Storm was not available the rest of the weekend. I do think Tennessee's approach is kind of the coastal approach, just kind of sit on the changeup. And Tanner would probably tell you that he probably didn't have his best stuff the other day, and that's just the way it goes sometimes. So I would say it was a combination. After the home run, that they hit, that finally landed. By the way, it landed on a roof next door. The Roos patrons said they had never seen a home run hit that far. I think that was.
You're talking about the one that Burke hit?
Yeah, the one that Burke hit. It cleared the trees, and I don't. Maybe DeQuincy Scott back in the day, maybe Fred Cooley or somebody like that, but nobody had seen a home run like that.
And it didn't take long to clear the trees either. It was quick, fast, and efficient.
Very, very quick. It was very, very quick. But yeah, I think it was a combination of those two things. But yeah, I think the end of the day though, and people will hear this as a homer comment, and I guess I played for Southern Miss, so I am one. But you just took a team who has $150 million more in athletic budget revenue than you do. And you had them. You had them in game 2. And it was just the fact that they eventually just had better dudes in a game 3 than you did. And you still left 11 on base. And I think you guys, I was listening to the previous segment before, I think it just shows what this baseball program is. Because if you go to a regional, you're probably going to be in an SEC regional. Yeah, that's the way. If you don't host, you're going in an SEC regional. And
if you do host, you got an SEC, you got a 2 seed coming in that's an SEC team.
You do. And I think it speaks to the fact that of the job that Scott has done, of Corky and Hill and Pete and all those guys. The point is, they should not have this type of success, and yet they continue to have success, and they have success right now more than anybody else in the country with the 40 wins. So I said this on the Eagle Hour today, as I was watching Scott walk to left field last night. I saw 40 as in 2 ways. I said that is the standard by which how many wins you're supposed to get in a baseball season for it to be good. At the same time, in a much greater stance, 40 for me now means the standard by which you run a baseball program over a long period of time.
And that becomes Christian Ostrander's job today. He's now the head coach.
Yeah. Rick Cleveland was on with us today, and he said as Oz was walking off the field last night, he kind of gave him a little chest thump, and he said, "We're going to get there."
Good stuff. Luke, thanks for your